I don't think I am cursing as much as that little montage of things clipped from different podcasts and interviews makes it sound.
Right.
Everybody in the government of California should be embarrassed as shit. We f***ed up governance. It's f***ing great. That just promises more shit. And that was a load of bullshit. There's a lot of things they're doing over there that I don't f***ing love. This shit is f***ed up and bullshit. They're doing stupid shit, sort of copyright on lawsuits. You have to be rip shit angry. You knew what you were saying was bullshit.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Ezra Klein.
That was the end of Ezra Klein's career at the New York Times.
Ezra Klein has been explaining American politics for 20 years. But what's changed over that time is who's listening. Back in Ezra's Vox days, all my nerdy liberal friends were Ezra Klein stans. They would send me Vox articles about the Affordable Care Act or Dodd-Frank, and I pretended to read each and every one. But today, Ezra has a much more powerful audience than a bunch of Sacramento virgins. As a New York Times columnist and popular podcaster, he has become a legit celebrity with very real influence in the Democratic Party. He was one of the first liberal pundits to admit the thing that everybody already knew, that Joe Biden's brain had turned into applesauce. And that column that he wrote had a huge impact. But candidates and campaigns, they're not really Ezra's specialty. Ezra's a policy guy. He loves policy. He literally once wrote that, quote, "the point of politics is policy." Now, if you said that into a mic at a Trump rally, you'd literally get booed off the planet. But Ezra has so much to say about policy that he wrote a new book about it called Abundance. So I sat down with him to talk about the book, his recent glow up, and what the is up with all the swearing. Y'all ready? Yes. Post-2024 election, I feel like Ezra's gone a little mask off. And dare I say, you've started to pick up a bit of a potty mouth. Let's take a look.
You're not going to vote for them no matter what fucking policies they promise you. Like, shut the fuck up with that.
Oh, get the fuck over it. It completely sounded like what it actually is to me, which is bullshit. A bunch of this was bullshit, right? Bullshit stories about Haitian immigrants eating dogs and cats. If it's so f***ing big, like in a big way, Donald Trump is president today because we did a shitty job on this with China.
Okay, I'm not here to judge.
You're just here to collect.
but I am loving Mask Off Ezra. This is fucking great.
You know what's funny? If you go back to my podcast in the Vox days.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of cursing in there.
There's some
I used to get people. I'm not Mike Birbiglia. I'm a blue pundit.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
And it happens at the time some.
Yeah.
We have the little explicit tag on the show.
Right.
I think since the election, more people have been having me on their shows.
Yes.
And I'm a little freer.
It's wild
when
to
my
see.
editors aren't the ones looking at the transcript.
It has been so fun to see an introvert turn into Samuel L. Jackson. But the real question I want to ask you is the cursing appropriate? Because I'm with it. It resonates with me, but is it appropriate for
I think it depends what you're
like
doing.
Okay.
I would not say I am doing it intentionally beyond it is the language that is coming to my mind in a moment.
Got it.
But I will say one thing, which is that I have a view that you should not make the language in which you talk about politics overly formal. When I was young, I was reading, so I got my start in journalism as a blogger.
Yeah.
And I remember being in college and I was reading some blog. It was by somebody who's pseudonymous, right? So not even a big political blog.
Sure.
And at that time, there wasn't even such a thing as a big political blog.
Right.
But I remember them writing about something related to politics and using the word props. And as dumb as it sounds now, I mean, waves
the
after...
context meaning, I want to give this person props.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
It was actually like a thunderbolt to me because I'd never seen anybody write about politics in non-stentorian language. I mean, all political writing up until then wore a bow tie. Like, it just all wore a bow tie. And, you know, I was young. And it's just like, oh, you could just write about it the way you would talk and write about
More colloquial,
things.
yeah.
More colloquial?
Yeah.
So I don't think I am cursing as much as that little montage of things clipped from different podcasts. Interviews makes
it sound. But it's a run. It is a run. And by the way, I'm
the
with
other
it.
thing that is true is that this is not, I always think you can do a kind of lying through affect, which is, and I worry that I particularly have a tendency towards this, or you can have a misdirection by affect, which is that you're talking about something people should not be calm about, but your temperament is very calm.
Oh, got it.
And so I try when I'm actually upset about something for the emotion of that anger, that sadness, that heartbreak, that enthusiasm to come out. Now, cursing is one of the lazier ways to do it. It's not the only tool in the toolbox, but I'm not self-editing away from it either. When that clip you played, which is from the first one you had, which is like, get the fuck out of here with that.
Yeah.
That's from deep in a Pod Save America interview.
Sure.
That's about, and this is maybe a good bridge to the book, that's about the tendency for people to excuse away the anger that residents of liberally run cities feel about disorder, about crime, about there being suddenly, an incredibly visible level of immigration, about the fact that they can't afford a house. And sometimes you'll have liberals say, well, like I have this crime chart and it shows that crime isn't going up. And you really do at some point have to look around and ask, are you telling everybody there that their experience is wrong because you looked at an appendix table? Or have you like gone and searched out what your chart might be missing? Well, I get personally frustrated at the tendency to tell people their experience of their life does not accord with your personal politics.
Well, this is important because I wanted to open with that game to talk about something more substantial. Why are you so mad?
So there's different directions to be mad on. There's an abundance of anger I'm feeling at the moment. I mean, we are talking, and by the time this comes out, who knows what will have happened. It's very hard to keep any commentary current for more than 3.5 hours right now. But we're talking at a moment when like Trump and Musk and Vance are lighting fire to the constitutional system, overturning the economy for no reason. They're trying to deport a kid with a green card for acts of speech. They're not even claiming he committed a crime, right? We are in an incredibly dark political timeline. And so I'm furious at them for their decisions, right? And the wanton cruelty inside of them. One of the things that I find almost, there is no bottom to my distaste for the way they exult in cruelty. And I haven't actually said this anywhere before, but they had this thing the other day. It was actually a couple weeks ago now. But
meaning the president?
They meaning the president, but it was the White House X account.
Okay.
And it was, I think it was called Immigration ASMR. And it was, you know what ASMR videos are? These sort of, they're sort of calming, soothing, like somebody doing bubble pop.
Sure. Ezra Klein's voice and then like someone's playing with marbles. Yeah.
But it was immigrant, it was they were shaking and dragging the manacles they are using when they deport people, right? It was the ASMR of deporting immigrants as their metal manacles.
Right.
Even if you want to deport these people, right? The idea that you would tweet that out as, and then Elon Musk with his stupid little happy, funny cry face thing.
Right.
They're not good people.
That cruelty and the lack of decorum is what you're
talking about. As Adam Serwer said, like the cruelty is the point. I'm not saying the lack of decorum isn't the thing, right? The lack of decorum, fine. There is virtue matters. Like virtue matters in politics, it matters in human beings. Mm-hmm. And when you walk down this road with yourself, when you begin to wring the virtue out of yourself, even again, political opinions aside, whatever you think about immigration aside, when you begin to make cruelty a meme, a thing you do for the applause of the crowd, when you want to see the crowd, when it's not that the lion has to eat the combatant, it's that you want to see the person suffer. So that's one side of it, right? That we are living through an age when we have elected some of the worst people to do some of the worst things. And then, on my side of the aisle, we fucked up governance and we explained it away again and again and again. And we can talk about it nationally, where I think in some ways the problem has been less bad. But I'm Californian, you're Californian.
Yeah.
And I like the people in many cases who lead the government in California, Gavin Newsom and others. And California is losing hundreds of thousands of people every year because they can't afford to live there.
Right.
In San Francisco and Los Angeles. I'm from outside LA. I lived in SF during a bunch of the writing of this book. And, I had friends who were moving away because they couldn't afford to raise families in the place that they protected in some cases, the place that they served, the place where they treated the sick and fought fires. And we have been explaining this away. Michael Bloomberg used to say that New York City is a luxury good, right? It is a luxury good, and so it should be priced like a luxury good.
What do you mean this explaining away? Graphs, details, like those sort of things?
No, I don't mean graphs or details. I mean just being okay with it.
Oh, hand-waving it. This is not that big of a
hand-waving
deal.
it, saying it's the other people's fault, not fixing it.
Got it.
Or when government fails, everybody in the government in California should be embarrassed as shit over high-speed rail. See, there it was.
There was.
And they should have done something to make sure it never happens again.
Okay.
And they haven't.
Can I ask
if you redid high-speed rail in California today, it would not go any differently. That's embarrassing. It's not that we failed the first time.
Yeah.
It's that we would fail the second. The Second Avenue subway in New York City, most expensive per kilometer rail project ever in human history. The next phase of it is projected to cost more per kilometer. That's what we should be embarrassed of.
Right. Can I ask a two-part follow-up to what you just said? I've heard and argue this back to me because I actually agree with you. I think virtue matters. In Hindi, there's a word called izzat, which means dignity and self-respect. Like the way in which you carry yourself, you should have izzat. Like I'm not going to do that. That would be demeaning of me. There are people that have argued that, those memes that get posted. Trump had that meme on Valentine's Day, roses are red, violets are blue. If you're illegal, we will deport you. And it looked like a Valentine's Day card that my first grader would. Exactly. And I heard from many people, some people make the argument, they go, good. Have the ugliness just be as out there as possible. Why hide it under decorum and soft language? What do you say to that? I have a lot of friends that feel that way. They're like, good.
Really interesting.
I want to see the pimple. I want to see the ugly fucking whitehead for what it is. I want to see the bulbous white pus that's inside of it. And don't use MAC foundation to cover it up with some pretty soft language. That was the first question.
I don't think it's impossible to have a grand distance between the bureaucratization and the cruelty, right? So the movie, The Zone of Interest.
Yeah.
I don't know what it would have meant to go see this movie, which is about the German town on the other side of a concentration camp and just its normalcy. But it's just like seemed like to me, which I have not seen it, like a tough way to spend an evening. But that movie, from everybody who did see it and everything I read about it, I mean, it's haunting just even to think about it. Right. So you can have an extraordinary gap between the normal, the mechanistic workings of government and the horrific heart of what that government is doing. But I think typically you don't. And say behind the zone of interest, Hitler, he didn't hide the ball. You can go read Mein Kampf, right? Hitler was clear. Like the ugliness was part of it. The violence was always part of it. The hatred was always part of it. You unleash these forces. We are creatures who are barely civilized. Barely civilized. When you make it part of the way that you get ahead in a political party is to unleash the part of yourself, to grow the part of yourself that treats other human beings as less than human, that treats them with contempt. I think a lot about J.D. Vance as a person. I think about him as a person, not because of his political views. I knew J.D. Vance when he had different political views.
Okay.
But I think
that's so wild that you know these people for a long time. Again, as a comedian, we know them as like almost like Pokemon characters.
When J.D. Vance was on my podcast back in maybe it was 2012.
Sure.
Back in the initial Hillbilly Elegy days. Virtue was really important to him. Decency was. It was something he didn't like about Donald Trump. And one of the things that frightens me about the modern Republican Party is watching people give themselves personality transplants in order to get ahead in it. Watching them unleash a cruelty and anger that maybe was always inside of them, maybe is put on for show and then becomes real. Elise Stefanik didn't used to be like this. Ted Cruz, who I've never liked in politics, didn't used to be like this. So many of them have imitated the worst part of Donald Trump's character.
Oh, got it.
To come up behind him.
Got it. You're cosplaying to change who you are.
But you're not cosplaying. Because you become what you force yourself to be. It's like all the kids online who get into anti-Semitism because it's edgelord humor, and soon enough we're actually, little neo-Nazis.
Got it. Okay.
The parts of yourself that you exercise get stronger. And so that thing, right, like that the cruelty is really there, and it's better if we can see it. I'm not saying that there's nothing to it, right? You can have something that is so well hidden under bureaucracy that you really are unable to fight the thing at the heart of it because they have layered it in such a maze of complexity.
Right.
But that's usually not what happens. And institutions are structures of formation. They form the people in them. And when you begin to make part of the thing you have to do, another good example of this is the lying, right? From Sean Spicer in the first term saying it was the biggest inauguration crowd ever, to the fact that to get ahead in Republican Party politics, you had to pretend to believe that Donald Trump won the 2020 election, that it was rigged. Even if you knew what you were saying was bullshit, when you begin to stomp on the part of yourself that is uncomfortable deceiving people in public,
right,
then that part of yourself begins to die.
On Colbert, you said Democrats like government but don't make it work. Republicans try to make government fail. I was watching it and I was like, expound on that. But you didn't have time. You had to get to the act break.
Sure. I think in a way that's the core of this book.
Got it.
So there is this ideological collusion that is contrary to our typical story of politics. We have this typical story of politics. The left likes big government. It wants government to do things. The right hates government. It wants to destroy government. Partially right. The right hates parts of the government. Though, as we were just talking about with the deportation love letter, they like a big police state. They like a big surveillance state. They like a big national security state. They want the government to have incredible powers to imprison, to harm, to investigate. But the left has a very divided soul about government. There's a part of the left that does want government to do big things. And then there's a left that emerged, particularly in the back half walls. People like Ralph Nader and Rachel Carson, who are responding to the excesses of New Deal pro-growth liberalism.
Right.
We were building too fast. We weren't thinking about what we were making. We were, despoiling streams and clear cutting forests. And Robert Moses was cutting highways through places where, Black people lived and wasn't getting any input from that community. And we sort of built a lot of ways to check the power of the government. If you look at how environmental law works in this country.
Yeah. So just for the listeners who haven't read the book yet, you do this, you kind of wax poetic about in the 60s and 70s, basically there were a lot of critical lawsuits against companies that were doing things that were environmentally harmful to citizens.
But more than that, there were new laws passed that the way they worked was they made it easy to sue the government.
Yes.
That's what the National Environmental Policy Protection Act is.
Yes.
There are tons of these bills at the state and local level. The way they work is they create an avenue for you to sue the government if particularly the government did not do enough research and assessment of the likely consequences of an action. And the question that suit is asking is not, is this thing good or bad for the environment? It's, was this aspect of the thing considered? Were possible mitigation strategies discussed? And so over time, these, say, environmental reviews went from, I think it was like an average of 7 pages to thousands of pages as people realized they had different ways to sue them. And so they're all built now to do sort of cover your ass on lawsuits. Yeah. But this is true across a lot of different domains. And so what you have is even particularly in blue states, a government that is hobbled from action by well-meaning liberal legislation that was worried about government doing too much and ended up creating government that does too little.
Isn't there a little bit of this cut the red tape and let builders build and let us get shit done? Isn't that a bit of a conservative argument?
There is, but it has one distinction that I think people don't actually think about that much, which is, yes, it is that. Yeah. There is a lot of red tape. Yeah. Too often in politics, we're sort of affective about things. Like if you're a liberal, you're supposed to be pro-regulation. Yeah. And sort of discount ideas or news stories where regulation is bad. If you're conservative, you're pro-deregulation. So there are places where liberals should not be pro-regulation. We have way over-regulated building a house on the private market. But the other thing that I think people don't think about at all here is deregulating government itself. And what we have often done is we've over-regulated government, not necessarily the private market. Right. Although sometimes, yes, the private market too. Yeah. And so sometimes when I talk about housing with my sort of more leftist friends, they'll say, well, the answer here is public housing. Fucking great. I live on a block with tons of public housing. I love public housing. Right. under the rules that we currently build public housing, which are more difficult than the rules under which we build private housing, the government cannot afford. There is no possible way for the government to solve housing problems by building public housing, because it has made that public housing functionally impossible to construct on time, on budget, etc. You would need to restructure the way the government itself builds. Again, that's high-speed rail, right, in California.
So
the private sector wasn't the main ones doing high-speed rail. That was the government. And we made it, when the government does things, the government has to hit a much higher standard than the private sector in order to do very complex builds. And then it doesn't get them done. And then we lose even more faith in the government. Then we put it under even more rules for audits and oversight, which makes it even harder to get anything done. And you get this vicious cycle of public failure, public distrust, more regulation, more public failure, more public distrust, etc.
Yes. I mean, are you basically saying that regulation has kind of gotten in the way of the American dream in 2025?
Some regulation. We want these things that I consider to be a bit childish. We want to be able to say government is good or government is bad or regulation is good or regulation is bad. It's just not how life works. Some regulation is bad. Some regulation is good. There are things I would like, for instance, environmental laws that deregulate our ability to build clean energy and more intensely regulate the building of fossil fuel infrastructure. I want to make it harder to build things that leak methane and carbon, carbon dioxide into the air. I want to make it easier to site solar panels, to do interstate transmission lines. Right now, the whole theory of decarbonization is we're going to move the entire economy functionally onto electricity. We have all these things where, you pump oil into your car. What you're going to do is you're going to plug your car into something, right? That's electric vehicles. But that means what we're going to do is increase the amount of electricity we need to generate by something like 2 or 3 times. So now we need to generate 2 or 3 times more electricity, and we need to turn all the electricity we're currently generating from dirty sources over to clean ones. So we need to build all of this electricity because a lot of it's going to be solar and wind. There are places you have more solar and wind power. At least it's easier and more efficient to generate it. Then you got to move it from there. We don't have enough transmission lines to do that. So you need to build a bunch of them, but we're not building nearly enough because we've made it incredibly hard to do. So you need to deregulate in a way. What I would really say is you need to consolidate the authority to build transmission lines. It all, unfortunately, is like case by case by case. And it's why the core idea of the book is that you need to ask, what do we need more of? And then you need to work backwards as to why it's so hard to get
Can you articulate what the title abundance means? Because the way you closed your Colbert segment was, it was an overarching idea of hope and abundance for your children. But what specifically needs to be abundant?
I would call them the factors of production. What we really focus on in the book is housing, clean energy, state capacity, the ability of government to do things, scientific innovation, and the implementation, the manufacturing and deployment of those innovations, which the point there is, like, we invented the solar panel in this country. But we let China make so many of them, and we made it so hard to make them here. That now China completely owns solar panel manufacturing. And then they've started to own the innovations on that. They're just better at building them.
So what's wild is when we were going over the book, we were riffing and we kind of felt there are these weird parallels that you're making that Tech MAGA also agrees with. So I was wondering, have you found yourself, as you've gotten older, to be personally becoming more conservative?
No, I think I've become more.
Like, can I give you an example from me? And then you can answer. This is not like a gotcha. So sometimes I'll be driving into the city to our studio. So our studio's here. It's near Grand Central Station. I'll be driving in, and I have a Toyota, not to brag. And sometimes I'll hit that 4th or 5th pothole. And I'll be like, if I hit another fucking pothole, the next sign that I see that says I'm a developer and I'm going to fix I'll vote for you. I will literally vote for you.
Well, I guess if that's what it means, the reason I sort of don't just say yes to that question is I just don't think this maps onto a simple single dimension of conservatism and liberalism, if we even know what those mean anymore. Because I'll say one thing for sure. I don't think Donald Trump and the Republican Party that he leads are conservatives. I don't think they've been conservatives for a long time. Maybe if we had the conservatives of George Romney, Mitt Romney, I would find parts of that appealing. Maybe. Although I also want a much more powerful. This is my argument with my leftist friends, who sometimes when there's a thing that me and Derek criticized. Derek Thompson is my co-author on the book. Criticized called everything bagel liberalism. It's where you sort of layer way too much into a single project. So in order to build this affordable housing, you also need to hit these green building standards and do a higher than normal ventilation standard. And pay prevailing wage or higher. And finally, you've made it so you can't actually complete the affordable housing development because you've got so many good things in there.
Yeah.
They're the liberals or people who I understand myself to be ideologically aligned with, who will then push me. It's like, well, you don't want this to be, green energy, green code compliant. I'm like,
and you're like, I can't get everything into this bagel.
I'm on your left. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because I want a government capable of delivering on the things it promises. And you want a government that just promises more shit.
Well, you talk about this thing in the book called procedure fetish, okay? Yeah. You say Democrats and progressives have this thing called procedure fetish. Now, what does that mean? Because it sounds like something you would see on an NSFW Discord for attorneys. Like, what is procedure fetish?
That's a term from Nicholas Bagley, who is a administrative law professor at Michigan, at UMich. He was the lead counsel. I'm just establishing some bona fides here for Governor Gretchen Whitmer.
Yeah.
And so this is his law review article, the procedural fetish. And what he basically says is that, so first, liberalism has developed. It has centered itself professionally around the legal profession. So until Tim Walz, the last presidential or vice presidential candidate on a Democratic ticket,
this is a wild stat,
who did not go to law school, was, I believe, Walter Mondale. Like, you got to go back that far to find even one.
Right. I mean, Lincoln was a lawyer, though, right? Like, there's a lot of lawyers.
Yeah, the point is not you should never have a lawyer. The point is that, does it need to be the case that you never don't have a lawyer? Right. The point is that liberals became highly legalistic. It's not like that on the Republican side, right? Yeah. I mean, there are lawyers. J.D. Vance is a lawyer.
Yeah.
Totally. But it's a mix of things. And the point that Bagley is making is that the legalistic way of looking at the law asks a very important question, which is, how does government attain legitimacy? Government has all this power. How do you make that power legitimate? And the lawyers, because they're lawyers, there's nothing wrong with this. You just want to balance it out. It is legitimate because it follows the agreed upon process, not because it achieves the agreed upon outcome.
Which is some parliamentary procedure bullshit.
Yeah. So, oh my God. Hasan, Jesus.
I'm talking that talk.
That's wow.
Well, the dichotomy, and I want to pitch this for you while you're on the press tour for the book. The way I see it and the way it's being articulated is it's almost like there's the rule follower party versus the rule breaker party. And there is, in every small business owner and every entrepreneur that I know, whether it's a group of comedians starting a fucking open mic at a bar, all the way up to someone who is opening a small restaurant, to I know so many people that are trying to pursue the American dream. But that's the dichotomy.
Yeah.
Rule followers versus rule breakers. And I do think Tech MAGA and Trump are speaking to the rule breaker party. And my question to you is, how do you get a bunch of Democratic Lisa Simpsons to all of a sudden wile out? Because Nelson is the president.
Yes.
And you're fundamentally asking these nitpicking litigators to behave a little bit like Nelson and wile out. And that's such a, I don't know if I'm articulating that right, but that is so contrarian to their core of who they are.
So, my first book was on political polarization.
Yeah.
And one of the arguments of that book is that polarization...
Why we're so divided, right?
Why we're polarized,
polarized, yeah.
One of the arguments of that book is that polarization can become a totalizing process. It begins with something kind of natural, right? In the mid-century, the political parties weren't even ideologically distinct. You had liberals in the Republican Party, conservatives in the Democratic Party. So when people would vote for, their Democratic member of the House, they might not get a party that reflected in any way the ideology they voted for, at that individual level. yada, 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 story about why, we sort of split into liberals and conservatives being Democrats and Republicans. And that makes sense. But then it's sort of like it doesn't know where to stop. And one of the things that begins to happen is you psychologically polarize. The parties become temperamentally very different. And one way you can actually see this is in something that happened really just in the last couple of years. My friend Matt Iglesias calls it the crank realignment.
Okay.
So you used to have a bunch of cranks in both parties. And on the right...
I thought you were talking about drugs. I was like, wait, what? Okay, go ahead.
You had on the right a certain kind of conspiracy theorist, right? Think about the John Birch Society from the past.
Yep.
You think about the sort of people who believed, Bill Clinton was running a vast murder ring, right? You have a sort of crankish Republican Party. It can be very worried about the globalists, all that. And on the left, you had this sort of anti-GMO, I don't know about these vaccines, like crunchy.
Very granola, yeah.
RFK Jr. is a very good example of a left crank.
Okay.
And he used to be on the left crank, he used to be like a left crank on Air America. And the thing where he's now in the Republican Party speaks to a way the party is psychologically polarized. The Democrats became the party of people who like the systems, right? If you think about those lawn signs, no human being is illegal, we believe in science. It's not that you believe in science, you believe in scientific institutions. You're not out there running experiments. You're sort of assuming what the experts tell you is true.
Okay.
And the reason you hate RFK Jr. is he's saying what the experts tell you is not true. And I'm not an RFK Jr. fan either. That dude should not be HHS secretary. But there was something healthy about the fact that the parties were a little bit divided in this way, that you had on the left, populists who were very skeptical of corporations. I mean, you think about ad busters, right? Skeptical of all the advertising.
Sure.
And on the right, you had its own sort of versions of this. But now it's like the Democrats are the party of manners, a party of systems, a party, and the Republican Party is the other thing. You were saying rule breakers. I think the right likes to think of themselves as rule breakers, but they're not.
You don't think what's happening right now that they're breaking the rules?
Well,
I can't even keep up with how many.
They're autocrats.
I ask myself, I'm like, is this a?
They're autocrats.
Okay.
It is an authoritarian party that follows its leader.
Yeah.
You can't break Donald Trump's rules. Right? People always say that these things you can't say on the left, right? The left, it's so censorious, it doesn't let you say anything. Try being a Republican and getting ahead right now and saying, you know what? Donald Trump and Elon Musk are breaking the law left and right. And Donald Trump, of course, didn't win the 2020 election. That was a load of bullshit. Try saying that in the Republican Party and see how far you get. Sure. So the problem is the right is autocratic and the left is bureaucratic.
Got it.
And
but would they argue, again, I don't agree with what they're doing. Would they argue, hey, we're breaking the existing rules?
Yeah.
Because the existing rules suck. The existing rules of... Why are we playing the game this way?
I wouldn't disagree with that.
I
wouldn't. My point is not that the right isn't breaking rules. They're breaking laws.
Yeah. My
My point is that it's not rebellious. It is a top-down personality cult.
Okay.
Which makes it dangerous.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things they're doing over there that I don't fucking love. Let's be clear.
Sure.
But if they were passing them legally, my view is that's the outcome of an election. Right? You can get rid of USAID. That is your power as a political party.
Right.
If you can pass it, you can do it.
Right.
Nothing illegal about that. The Constitution doesn't say we have USAID. Just going in and closing it down overnight, you can't do that. That is against the law. I mean, they did do it.
Yeah.
So, and I do think if I want Democrats to learn anything from them, I want them to learn that a lot of the things that they have treated as inviolable, our lawyer said we couldn't do this. A lot of that was just norms. There was a lot more you could have done than you did.
Yeah.
In not doing it, you ran government badly and people got fed up with you.
Can I make a pitch? It's a bit of a leap, but I'm kind of yes-anding what you're saying, and tell me if you follow me here. There is the way you were saying where the Democratic Party is like, well, my lawyer said, well, the censor said, or no, we shouldn't, and this very no, we can't type energy. Is the whole Luigi phenomenon a symptom of this as well? In a world where the majority of people use pleasantries or Twitter fingers to do something, there is something kind of bold about action in the face of frustration.
I think it's completely true, right? And it's always one of the appeal of authoritarians or strongmen. I alone can fix it. Mm-hmm. There are,
or
by
that
the
you're
way,
doing something. How many times have you heard
Look,
something?
One of the I used to have as my Twitter back way old days of Twitter. I used to have I'll out myself as a nerd here, a comic panel from the incredible, it's Aja and Fraction. I forget their first names, but an incredible Hawkeye run in Marvel Comics.
Sure.
And it was just this picture from this one panel of a newspaper headline that said, "Everything is horrible. Please somebody do something."
Yeah.
Like, that's at the core of politics.
Yep.
Right? Or the famous Occupy Wall Street sign, "Shit is fucked up and bullshit."
Yeah.
One of the huge mistakes Democrats made with Joe Biden was, even though they did do quite a lot, they left open the entire field of performing the doing of a lotness. Biden at 82 was simply not able to project any kind of mastery of events. And that was devastating. People do want leadership, particularly at times when the world feels unruly and disordered. Now, Trump is already going. I mean, it took Biden 221 days for his approval ratings to turn net negative. It's taken Donald Trump about a month. So this is not working. But yeah, you gotta give people a deep sense, which is both about what you're gonna do and about how you do it, that you see that society is on some fundamental level a bit deranged. And you're gonna try to fix it. Look, there was a genius to Donald Trump on the first day of his presidency, signing those executive actions in public and throwing the pen out. Right? There is a lot for Democrats to learn from the Trump administration. There is a lot for them to learn.
I pitched this to Senator Elizabeth Warren, by the way. I said the Democrats have to pick up a little bit of the WWE energy.
Yeah, a little bit of the WWE
signing the bill
energy.
And throwing the pen is like a...
Yeah, it's got a t-shirt cannon full of regulations.
Totally.
There's a lot you can do. And yeah, part of the appeal, I mean, to be fair, he has said this very explicitly, and this is an old Steve Bannon thing, they're trying to give an incredible impression of action, which they are doing. Now, the problem with that, and the reason they're going to sour people on it, is that they are overwhelming not just the rest of us, but themselves. They have no idea what they're doing. They do not have some attentional resources we don't have. Look how often Elon Musk is tweeting, right? Like, these people are not paying close attention. They are saying yes to things coming from all parts of the administration. They are not red teaming it in the sense of like going to the agency and be like, what will happen if we do this? You're having big internal fights in that administration over, say, firing a bunch of air traffic controllers when planes are falling out of the sky. They're doing stupid shit and things are going to break. But on the other side, this thing where you have to wait for everything to go through an endless interagency process, this thing where you will, pass $42 billion for rural broadband and years later not a single home will be hooked up to rural broadband, you have to be ripshit angry about that.
Right.
Like, even if it's under you, you have to be angry about it. You have to be up there pounding the table in front of people. A genius of Donald Trump always in his first term is that he always seemed mad about his own government, like how fast it was moving, what it was doing and not doing. He didn't own everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's things that were not in his power, and he made sure you knew it.
Mm-hmm.
And he made sure you shared his impatience. Bernie Sanders is also really good at this as a politician. Bernie Sanders has voted for 1 million bills Bernie Sanders thinks are completely watered down quarter measures. And he both votes for those bills, tells you he voted for him, and he rails against how far we still have to go.
Sure.
You do not have to own everything you don't like about government because you're a part of government, and you sure as hell don't have to stop trying to fix it.
Yeah. I want to pivot from something global to something a little bit more local, which is you, Ezra Klein.
How often I curse.
Now, you're cursing more. You have a hit podcast called The Ezra Klein Show. And it's now become a video podcast. Mm-hmm. You're doing Colbert, you're doing the media rounds. You have gone from being voice famous to video famous. Dare I say, Ezra, you've had a glow up.
People keep saying this.
Let's take a look. You went from high school librarian to this. What's it like?
But you know what's funny?
What's it like to go?
I am currently wearing that shirt.
Oh, the same shirt.
Not like I have bought another version of it.
It's the same shirt.
It is this shirt. So just keep that in mind.
Well, how does it feel having your Chris Pratt moment? You went from likable guy on a sitcom to I'm doing TRT and I'm a Marvel superhero.
I'm glad people feel that way. I grew a beard, and what I will say is that it has changed my public image more than I would have thought.
How are you feeling?
I guess I'm feeling fine. I don't know. I'm worried about the state of the world, man.
It's okay to say that you're feeling yourself. And look, I'm not here to grill you. I'm not here to ask you the hard question, but can I?
Yeah.
Look, did you take any inspiration from someone that you may or may not know? Let's take a look.
Is that...
Did you go to your barber and when they have the poster on the wall and they say, what do you want? Did you point to my photo?
I just sort of have a shirt. It's just...
No. Ezra, you got the high to mid taper
I got the you.
with the right part.
You're not even wearing this thing, man.
Oh, I got to stay ahead of you.
Yeah, fair enough.
I can't be. I
Here-
got to be two Pinterest boards ahead of you
God's
guys.
honest truth about what people call the glow up.
Okay.
I'm 40 years old.
Yes.
I turned 39. It happened a year ago. It's crazy. And I don't know. I was a little bit like, you go in one direction or you go in the other.
Mm.
And the thing that really bugged me, most things I don't think I got to glow up. My clothes aren't that different. I did grow a beard. I've had this haircut for many years now.
Yes.
But I did.
You did lose the glasses. You did have your she's all that moment.
I've worn contacts for like on and off for a long time. And now I'm doing more video. I wear more contacts because you get that weird like light thing happening on the glasses. But I did start working out really differently because I used to be pretty strong when I was younger. And then my 30s, I got injured a bunch of times. And I had this moment. And the other thing I did was I read Peter Attia's Outlive. And that whole book is like, its main thing is the muscle mass you have will determine your long-term health outcomes. And I was like, if I don't turn this, it's just going to go off. And so the reality of to the extent there's been like any real change, it's like I do drink my protein shakes now.
So I
do take it seriously.
But are you and Barbaro out here lifting?
Oh my God, like you can't keep up with Barbaro. I got no cardio compared to that guy.
Oh, for real?
I got no cardio compared to anybody, but definitely not.
I'm
that guy.
Michael Barbaro, and can you beat me in a foot race?
No.
Ezra, I notice you hitting the gym these
Can't
days.
beat that guy in a foot race. Can't beat him in the podcast charts.
All right, gotcha. All right, let's take this down.
Hurry right away.